G'day guys, sorry for being a few minutes late. Welcome to this episode of Aussie English. This is another phrasal verb episode. This is going to be episode number 9 of the phrasal verb ones. And today we're going to be going through phrasal verbs that we combine with the particle primarily in, okay? But there's in, into, to, and then in on, okay? So there's some confusing stuff going on. Today I'm going to try and go through that, help clear it up a little bit for you guys. After that we can have a bit of a chat as usual. If you guys have any questions, feel free to save them for the end. Put them down in the comments here. A quick mention quickly, remember I am taking postcards now from you guys, so if you would like to send me a postcard, please do. I put up a blog post and a YouTube video on it. I think I've mentioned it a few times as well, but I will put the address below again so that if you guys have any questions, if you just want to say good day, please send me a postcard because I want to fill this entire wall with postcards from you guys. I also wanted to check with you guys. November is apparently podcast month. November is podcast month, and so I'm going to try and be doing a podcast a day, because apparently that's the challenge for November. So I didn't do it last year. I didn't know about it last year. This year I want to try and do that. I want to get cranking. I want to crank it out. I want to try and do as much as possible. I want to work with a lot of you guys. So if you have suggestions for the kinds of episodes that you would like, please give them to me. I'm going to be doing Walking with Pete episodes. I'm going to be doing interview episodes. Hopefully I'll get a chance to interview this lovely lady Petenka, who's just commented down below, catching up with her this Friday. I'll try and also do some pronunciation ones as well as the usual expression ones. But if you have suggestions for the kinds of episodes that you would like me to publish more of, maybe I have never even thought of it and you have an idea, please let me know. I was also thinking that I could go through news articles with you guys, talk about interesting things that are happening in Australia or around the world relating to science, to animals, whatever. But that's the basic idea. So I would love some feedback from you guys. Anyway, give me a thumbs up, guys, if you can hear me okay. I assume that the audio is fine, as I've been talking for about 5 minutes and no one has said, "Hey Pete, we can't hear you, your mouth is just moving," and nothing's come out. And also, if you have time, please feel free to give this video a quick share, as it'll bump it up in the Facebook queue so that it gets a bit more attention, okay? But that is the basic idea for November. I want to keep pushing, get this podcast going, get more people watching, get more people engaged, help spread more Aussie English, and help you guys defeat the beast, the monster, the dragon that is Australian English. Aside from that, if you haven't already, make sure you sign up to the Aussie English Classroom. It's $1 for the first month. You get 4 lessons emailed to you. You get all these exercises. If you love studying, if you love working hard, even if you don't like working hard, make yourself do it. Do a little bit every single week and really push to get that English to the next level. Sign up to the Aussie English Classroom. And also, obviously, if you're having trouble with phrasal verbs, that's what these lessons are all about. So today is EPV, Effortless Phrasal Verbs, episode number 9. Today we're going to be tackling the phrasal verbs that go with in, into, and in on. Okay, so you can sign up to that course. I'm releasing it. You get these videos like this, except they get inset up in the corner here with a slideshow with the example sentences. You can read it, you can see pictures and diagrams that explain how these phrasal verbs work. You get an MP3 you can download, and you get a transcript that's word for word of the lesson as I give it. It's not the entire video, it's just the basic lesson that I give, and it's definitely going to help you conquer the beast that is phrasal verbs. Anyway, guys, 1 tick and we can get started. All right. So I'm going to give the spiel, I'll do the lesson, and then if you guys have questions, I'll answer them at the end. Let's get into it. Alright guys, welcome to episode number 9 or component number 9 of the Effortless Phrasal Verb course. Today we're going to be tackling phrasal verbs that pair with the particles in, into, in and to separately, and in, on. Okay, so bear with me, we'll go through it. I'm going to try and make this a little easier to understand as there is some confusion, and even I had to go and sort of research this to better understand how and when to use these particles. So we can create phrasal verbs by adding in onto them. This usually means within, okay, inside of something. So it indicates position, within, inside of something, okay, like my car is in the garage. We can also use the prepositional particle into. When we use into, this is related to direction and movement. Okay, so if my car is in the garage, if it's outside the garage, I drive it into the garage. So it went from outside in, it went into the garage. You're often going to see though, in and to separated. So they're not going to be the same word, the one particle, into. They're going to be in and then to. This happens sometimes, and this was something really confusing for me to overcome. I had to read up on this. So when in is part of the phrasal verb, like to break in somewhere, that's when you're going to see it separated from to. When to is actually an adverb, or it's associated with the noun or the thing after it, and it's indicating what the verb acted. Okay, so I broke into a bank. It's two words, in and to. I broke into a bank because where did I break in? I broke in to a bank. It can also happen when to is an adverb. So when to is at the front of a verb, for instance, to look, to see, to hop, to do. If it's part of a verb, we don't join it to in, okay? So I broke in to see an empty vault. So I broke in to see an empty vault, okay? So there you go. I'll give you a little example of how this is important when writing. So imagine I turned my paper, imagine I'm writing a paper, like an assignment. I turn my paper in to my teacher. So this could be taken two ways depending on whether you keep into together or apart. If I said into my teacher, separated, that is that I gave the paper to my teacher. If I turn my paper into my teacher, and into is one word, that means that I transformed the paper, literally transformed the paper I'd written on into my teacher. So the paper transformed and became my teacher. So that's why it's sort of important to sometimes separate these, although people are pretty much always going to understand what you mean, okay? The last one here is in, on. In, on. You're going to see this from time to time. And this will be like a phrasal verb that takes in, and then on after this phrasal verb indicates that something or someone is experiencing that action, the phrasal verb, okay? So like, I walked in to a room, I walked in, and if someone was in there kissing someone, I walked in on those two people kissing. So I walked in on those two people doing something. And it's the same thing with like focus in. If I focus in, I'm focusing in like this, it means that I can better see it, or I'm concentrating on that thing. If I focus in on something, that's once the phrasal verb takes an object. So I insert on to make sure you know that when I say focus in, that I'm doing it to this thing, okay? Anyway, bit of a long intro. Don't worry too much about that, guys. Don't try and memorize these by heart. You'll get a feel for it over time. Natives screw this up all the time, me included. Quite often when I'm writing, I'll put into together when it shouldn't be, and I'll split it when it should be put together. So don't stress. Okay, so there's going to be 5 sort of sections for today's episode. The first one's going to be position and movement. Basically, in and into, and in on is quite often used for entering a place or for something to get closer to something else. So it's moving in on something, okay? You might move into a room, you might move in on something. It can also be number 2, visit quickly. So you might visit a place very quickly and use the particle in after a bunch of verbs. I'll go through some in-on verbs as well. Number 4, I'll go through some miscellaneous ones, and then there'll be 10 expressions at the end that use in or into as usual. So let's get into it. So the basic one, number 1, is always movement and position. So this is like putting something in something else, putting it within something else, inside of something else. Imagine that I have some trash. This pen is trash and I'm going to put it in the bin. I might discard it in the bin. I might put it in the bin, chuck it in the bin, throw it in the bin, toss it in the bin, or place it in the bin. So you're going to get a sense here of how I just pick the verb, I get in and I put it on there to say that the piece of trash is going within another object. You could enter a car, and you can enter the car by getting in the car. You could step in the car. You could jump in the car, and you could hop in the car. So again, it's all about how you want to describe that action occurring using a verb, but in because it's a thing that you're going inside of, okay? It's a thing you're going inside of. I thought today that I would also go through a few extra verbs, less common, that are related to walking or running. And these are ones you're likely to come across when reading, okay? So we'll go through to stroll, to saunter, to dash, to storm, and to stride. So to stroll in or to stroll into somewhere, this is to walk in a leisurely way, very calmly, just to stroll. So he strolled in to work. So he strolled in to work. We keep into a part. But on arrival to work, once he gets to work, he could stroll into some workers. And that's where into's together. So he's collided into the workers. So he strolled in to work, and once he's gotten to work, he strolled into some of the workers, okay? So it's sort of like if you go from somewhere to somewhere else, we keep in and to a part. If you go from outside of something and then into something else, we push it together. Hopefully that makes sense. If instead of strolling, he decided to saunter meaning walk in a slow, relaxed manner, so sort of the same thing again. To saunter in, he might saunter into work, and then on arrival, he could saunter into some of the employees at work. He could dash into work, and this is to run or travel somewhere in a hurry, to dash. So she dashed into work, and then on arrival, she dashed into some of the colleagues, some of the people at work. You could storm into work. To storm is to move angrily, forcefully. So if someone gets upset, they might storm out of the room into the next room. So they might storm into the next room. So she stormed into work, and then she stormed into us at work. You could stride into work, and this is to walk with long, decisive steps. So if you take really long steps, those are called strides. So we can use the verb to stride. And if you're striding into work, and then once you get to work, you're striding into people or into the office, that's a different way of using to walk. So these are different synonyms. The basic idea here, though, I just want to expose you to different verbs, okay? So I want to show you here what happens too when we take an object in the sentence. So now we're sort of doing this thing. We're doing strolling, we're doing sauntering, dashing, storming or striding to someone else. So we're causing them to stroll, saunter, dash, etc. So I strolled into school would become I strolled my kids into school. And once there, I strolled them into the classroom. So I could saunter my kids into school. I could dash my kids into school. We stormed our kids into school. They strode their kids into school. The basic thing I want to show you here, though, is where that object is going, which is between the verb and in, okay? So I hope that makes sense. Let's do some more movement ones. Now we'll do ones that go with into, and this means to meet by chance, so to come across someone. You might run into someone. So while walking into work, I ran into my boss. It's like I was running and smashed into them, literally, but figuratively it's to meet by chance. You might bump into them. While running into town, I bumped into my mate. You might stumble into someone. That's kind of like to trip and fall over, but we also use that in this sense. While jogging into school, I stumbled into my teacher. You could also use to plow into, to crash into, and to bash into. That's the same idea of colliding with. So if you were driving a car and you went off the road and smashed into a tree, you've plowed into the tree, you've crashed into the tree, you've bashed into the tree. It's because you've gone into it. All right, some more movement ones. You might punch, bash, smash, or pound in a door. Okay, so that would be the idea of you've got a door on the wall here and you're pushing it inwards, but you're doing this by punching it, by bashing it, by smashing it, by pounding it. So the fireman punched in the door to get into the room. You could also push in the door or force the door in. You can separate these phrasal verbs. So a crowd of people might have helped the fireman push the door in so he could go in and save everyone. If he wanted to use his foot, he would kick the door in. He would stomp in the door. The basic idea here is that in, because the door's going into the room, and we're just picking the verb for how to describe that happens. So maybe the cops showed up and they helped the fireman kick the door in, okay? So you can also enter a conversation. Imagine someone walked in the room right now. They walked into the room, they walked in the room, and they decided to enter this conversation that I'm having with you guys. So we could use phrasal verbs like to chime in. To chime in is to interject with a remark. So they might chime in. They chimed in and started jabbering on and on and on and on about something. So they're talking on and on. So they chime in, or they could chime into the conversation that I'm having. So as soon as there's that object there, the conversation, we use into instead of just in. They chimed into the conversation. They could butt in. So if they interrupt me, they butt in. And they might butt in to the discussion. They could cut in, again, interrupting. They interrupt me speaking, they're cutting in. They cut in and start waffling on and on and on about something. They cut in to the chat, they interrupt me. They could break in. They break in as in they go over what I'm saying. They've broken my speech and taken over. They have broken in and started spouting on and on and on about something else. Okay, so they've broken into me talking. And the last one here is to join in. Maybe they sit down next to me and they decide to join in the conversation. So they join in, or they join into the conversation, or they join into the argument. And so, yeah. We could also have the basic idea of just entering. So the one I've got here is to breathe in. If I just go, the air is entering my lungs, so I'm breathing in versus breathing out. Exhaling, inhaling, breathing in, breathing out. Once I've breathed in, so I could breathe in, that's just me going, I could breathe air in, so I'm breathing the air in. I could breathe the air in to my lungs. So you'll see what's happening here when I start using direct and indirect objects. I breathe in, I breathe the air in, I breathe the air into my lungs. And maybe there's a cop getting me to do a breathalyzer test where I have to blow in to the breathalyzer. He's getting me to breathe into, he's getting me to blow into the breathalyzer, okay? If I breathe in, so I go, I suck the air in, so I suck it in. I take it in. I take the air in. I pull the air in. And once it's in, someone could say to me, keep it in. keep the air in, hold it in, hold the air in, force it in. So if someone was breathing into my mouth, maybe I needed CPR because I'd, drowned or something. He's forcing the air in to my lungs, okay? So again, I want you to get that feeling of how these verbs are changing and how I'm just placing in after it, or into if it's related to going into a location, right? So the next one here is just some sort of basic ones related to entering. You could color something in. This would be that you have like an outline. Maybe I've got one here of a circle. If I fill the circle in with color by painting, I'm coloring the circle in. I'm painting the circle in. I'm drawing the circle in. So he was coloring in. He accidentally colored into the outline. So if he accidentally drew or colored or painted and it hit the outline of the circle, he's colored into the outline. And he could color the drawing in to finish it. So into, together, and in to finish it is separated. Maybe he's doing this on a computer. He's using a mouse and his computer starts to run out of power. He has to plug the computer in to the wall. And if he unplugs it or he pulls the plug out, he's pulling the plug out. He's doing the opposite of plugging it in. So I'm plugging in my computer. I've plugged it in. I've plugged it into the power. Okay, to fill in. This is to add information into a form. So she filled in the form. Maybe she filled it in with her details. Maybe she filled it in to get her car rego. Okay, rego is in registration. We can break in. This has quite a few different meanings, some of which we'll go over later, but if you break in to a location, that is to enter a location illegally. So by forcing yourself inside, by forcing your way in. So he broke in to the house. He broke in. Again, that's separated there. He broke in. You can count someone in. If you count me in, that's like I'm going to be a part of whatever it is that we're talking about. So it's to include someone. You can count me in. I'll be involved. I'll be included. Count me in. You can clock in. So when you go to work and you register with whatever it is, usually I guess a clock back in the day, if you clock in, it's like you've punched your card into the wall and the clock has shown that it was the time you have to start. So you've clocked into work and then after work you clock out. Okay, clock in, clock out. I clocked in to work, I clocked in. Some more entering ones, you could dob someone in to an authority, to someone. So tell on someone. Tell the authorities about this person doing something wrong. So he dobbed me in to the teacher. He dobbed me in to the teacher. He dobbed me in. You could hand something in. So you could hand your assignment in to the teacher. You can hand it in. You can dive in. You can dive into something and you can dive in to something, which effectively just, they're different ways of saying to enter by diving, okay? Sort of to begin as well. So I could literally dive into a pool. He dove into the pool because he's entered into the water. He dove in. You could dive in to a topic. That's like to begin talking about a topic. So we dove straight into today's meeting. We dove straight in. A few more of these guys. To fit in. So fit something in or just to fit in. That's to have, firstly, sufficient space for something or within something for something. So I fit the meeting in today. I fit it in to my schedule. I couldn't fit in the car, so there was no space in the car, or I couldn't fit, so yeah, you can say I couldn't fit in the car, there's no space in the car, or I couldn't fit into the car. Again, it's kind of like either or. Fit in somewhere, so this would be like to be socially compatible with members of a group. If you fit in somewhere, that's like to feel comfortable or confident about your position there, okay? So he made some new friends at school and he fit in really well. So it's almost like there's a whole group of people and you've been inserted in and you fit perfectly, you fit in the group of people at school. Let's get on to number 2 now. So to visit quickly. So we can use to call in, to drop in, to pop in, to look in, to check in, and this is to sort of go somewhere and sort of see someone. So I'll check in later, I'll call in later, I'll drop in later, I'll pop in later, I'll look in later. Just pick whatever verb you want, guys, and you're saying in because you're going to someone's house and you're entering that place. So it's the idea you're going in to a thing, inside of something. But you can pop into a place on a person. So I might pop in at my folks' place on my folks, right? So my parents. I might pop into the shops on to the person that works at the shops. So on there is really showing you that it's happening to a certain person, and in is showing the movement into the location. So I'll check in later, I'll check in on my folks later. You can also duck into a location. That's the idea of quickly going in. Ducking is like to bob your head down, to duck. If you duck in somewhere, it's to go very, very briefly to a place. So I'll duck in later. I ducked into the shops to get some snags. So to get some sausages, I ducked in. I just did it really quickly to grab some and then leave. Number 3, now we'll go on to in on something or someone. And remember, you can call in on someone, you can drop in on someone, you can check in on someone that we just went over. That is to sort of do the phrasal verb within. So to check in, drop in, pop in. And then it's on a person. So it's to invoke the kind of, or show that that person's being affected by the phrasal verb within there. Okay, so to check in on someone. But we can use this in other ways. So you could walk into a room. I walk into a room, I walk in. And if people are in there doing something like kissing, I walk into the room, I walk in on them kissing. I walked in, I could barge in, I'd barge into the room, or I just barge in. And if there's people in there doing something, maybe they're having a meeting, I've barged in on the meeting. I've barged in on the people having the meeting. I've barged in on everyone. You can muscle in, or you can muscle in on someone. So the croc muscled in. The croc is in a crocodile, slang term for a crocodile. The croc muscled in. The croc could muscle in on a smaller crocodile in that area. And to muscle in is to use your muscles to force the person or something out of an area and sort of claim it as your territory. So the croc muscled in on the other croc's territory. We can also use it to mean sort of to get closer, to approach something. So to get closer to something. And we can use a whole bunch of different verbs here: to move in on something, to close in on something, to hone in on something, to home in on something, to dial in on something, to focus in on something, and to zoom in on something. Okay, so these all have slightly different meanings, but the basic idea is you were out here with your aim, with whatever it is that you were using, and you've brought it in. You've sort of sharpened it. You've made the focus better. You are aiming a lot more narrowly now, and it's sort of more precise. Okay, so like we imagine you're surrounding a house, the enemy's in the house. If you move in on the enemy, it's the idea of being out here and coming in on the enemy, the object there. And if you just want to talk about this movement, you're just moving in. So guys, let's move in. Guys, let's move in on the enemy who's waiting in the center here. Move in on the enemy. She could hone her telescope in on a planet. So imagine she's using a telescope. She's looking through her telescope at a planet. She's looking through it at a planet. It's zoomed out. She wants to zoom in. She can do that by honing in. She could home in. She can dial it in. She can focus it in. But she honed the telescope in on the planet. And we could just say she honed a telescope in. So she honed it in on the planet. We've taken and put an object in there, so on the object. Maybe he's taking photos of birds. So he's got his camera out, he's taking photos of birds. Maybe he needs to zoom in on the birds. So he wants to get a close-up of the birds, so he zooms in and he zooms in on the birds. Maybe you're using artillery, right? So a big cannon, and you're trying to dial the cannon in, you're trying to zoom it in, I guess you're trying to focus it in on the target, on the enemy. You know, you want to take the aim from this to a very, very precise point. You're dialing the artillery in on the target. You're dialing the artillery in. Okay, so hopefully this is starting to make sense. Hopefully I'm hitting this home and I'm sort of showing you how to use on after phrasal verbs to sort of invoke, to show that there's an object on which this phrasal verb is acting. Okay? So let's do some more ones with in on. If you're in on something, so to be in on something, this is to be aware of something, like a secret, to know some information that not everyone knows. Is she in on the secret? And again, you've got like an exclusive group of people. You want to be in this group. So are you in? And they're all on the secret. They all know about the secret. So is she in the group on the secret? Is she in on it? Is she in on the secret? You could let her in on the secret if you inform her about the secret. So should we let him in on the secret? Should we tell him about this information? Should we inform him? Should we allow him to know? Should we let him in on the secret? You can get in on something, and this is to be a part of something, maybe a bargain or a deal. So he wants to get in on the deal. You can go in on something, and that is to share the cost of something. So my mum recently called me and said, do you want to go in on this expensive present for your father? Do you want to go in on this expensive prezi? Okay, prezi, a slang term for present in Australia. Are we all going to go in on his birthday prezi? You can sit on something, sit in on something. You might sit on a chair in on a meeting, okay? So you're sitting in on a meeting, meaning that you've joined a meeting, but you're not really taking active part in this meeting. So you're sitting in on an event. She sat in on the meeting and listened in on the discussion. Let's go through some miscellaneous ones, guys. So you could settle in somewhere, or you could settle in to something. So if you settle in, it's like to become comfortable somewhere. So if I just moved into this house, I moved into this room, someone could ask me, are you settling in? Okay. So settling, remember that leaf kind of falling and then settling on the ground? It's like it finds its home, its spot. It's settling in. Imagine a bird in a nest. It's settling in its nest. It's trying to get comfortable. I'm settling into my new home. Someone could say, are you settling in? Okay. And if they want to ask me about the thing I've moved into, they would say, are you settling into your home? Okay. Okay. Are you settling in okay? Are you settling into your home? Okay. You can set in, or you can set into something. So, well, this isn't something you do. This is normally something that's done to you, for something to set in. And this would be for something unpleasant or undesirable, unwelcome to begin, and likely to continue. Okay, so maybe I have a feeling of fear start to set in. So that's like it slowly gets into my body. It starts to really set in and I start feeling scared. He felt a feeling of fear start to set in. Or I could say a feeling of fear began to set into him or into me. Okay, so that's where I've taken an object. So the feeling of fear set in, the feeling of fear set in to me. Similar to that, we can have something sink in. Again, the idea of doing this into my body, right? Like a ship can sink in the ocean, a feeling can sink into a person. And again, it can be used firstly for something unpleasant or unwelcome to begin and is likely to continue. He felt a feeling of dread start to sink in, or a feeling of dread began to sink into him. But we can also use this for something to be understood, for something to be fully realized. So if I suddenly read a letter and I don't understand it, I might have to read it a few times before the meaning starts to sink in, right? Before it sinks into my mind and I understand everything fully. So he read the letter twice before its meaning sank in. So a few more miscellaneous ones, guys. You could push in front of someone. So you can push in front of someone. And that is to like enter in front of someone else who's waiting in a queue or in a line. So they're waiting, everyone's lined up and they're waiting in a queue. If someone pushes in, they've pushed into the queue in front of you. So they've pushed in. So you might say to someone, go to the back of the line, don't push in, mate. Or he tried to push in to the line. So he's tried to push into, because he's tried to enter the line, he's tried to push into the line. You could box something in, or you can cage something in. That's the idea of using a box or using a cage to restrict something within it. So I'm boxing something in, or I'm using a cage to cage something in. So the examples I have here are, we boxed the sheep, meh. We boxed the sheep into the corner of a paddock. So that's like we use this shape to restrict them in the corner of the paddock. So we box them in. If we used a cage, we could cage them in. We cage them into the corner, we cage them in. Something can cave in. So this tends to be something like a tunnel or a cave, a cavern, some kind of like underground space. If it caves in, that's the idea of everything collapsing inwards. So the tunnel caved in. And we can use into when we use an object. So we could say it caved into itself. So it caved into itself. And we could also say it caved in on itself. Okay? A few more. To dig into someone, to lay into someone, to get stuck into someone. This is to begin to nag, harass, or be mean to someone, to be horrible to a person. So Dad loves to dig into me about smoking. So imagine I was a smoker. I decided I wasn't going to quit. He might lay into me. He might dig into me. He might get stuck into me. And that's the idea of nagging me, saying I need to stop, harassing me, being mean to me. So he digs into me, or he just digs in. He lays into me, or he just lays in. He gets stuck into me, or he just gets stuck in. So hopefully you're getting a sense of how to use in versus into something, someone. You can phase something in. To phase something in is to introduce something little by little bit by little bit. So the government will phase the new education scheme in over the next 3 years. So that means that it's going to gradually happen over 3 years. You've got 3 years lined up here, and over this time period, it'll gradually happen. The government's going to phase it in over the next 3 years. Here's one that I use quite a bit, to pencil something in. So pencil, I've got one. A pencil, if you pencil it in, it's that you've used a diary or your calendar, something to schedule, to organize something else. So to pick a time, you've written it in with pencil, you've penciled it in. If you use a pen, you've penned it in. If you want to talk about having used that book, you've booked it in, okay? So you can book something in, you can pencil something in, you can pen something in, and it just means to organize, to schedule something in a diary or a calendar. So when shall I pencil in the next English lesson, guys? You can confide in someone, that is to share a secret with someone under the assumption they won't tell anyone else. So I confide in my best friend. You can trust in someone, and that is to believe someone to be trustworthy. So you trust them, you trust in the person. I trust in my best friend. You can believe in something. So you could believe in God. You could believe in the theory of evolution. Or you could believe in someone. So you believe that you have confidence in that person. I believe in your abilities as a tradie. I believe in them. So a tradie is a tradesman, someone who's good at, using their hands to fix things and get paid for it. You can lock someone in somewhere or lock something in. That is to be set or locked or fixed in place. So I can use this figuratively or literally. I could lock someone in a room. If I twisted the key here, I turned the key and locked myself in here. I just got locked in my room. But I can lock someone in to mean that I have scheduled them for something and that has been fixed. That time next week, I've locked it in. I'll see you in our next lesson at 3 o'clock. I'll lock in our next lesson for 3 o'clock tomorrow. Here are the two other ways of using break in that I found, guys. So you can break in an animal, and that is to tame an animal. So if you broke in a horse, it's to train that horse to be ridden, to allow you to get on the horse, to ride the horse. So you broke in a horse. She broke in a horse, or she broke a horse in. And you can also sort of similarly do this with objects. So if I break in my shoes, it's the idea of I get them ready to be used. So I might wear them in, I might break them in. It's the idea of me wearing them as soon as I've bought them for a sort of short period, maybe a few days, and I'm breaking them in. So she broke in her new shoes, she broke her new shoes in. Now let's go through 10 expressions and we'll finish up, guys. So you can throw in the towel or you can chuck in the towel. I don't think I have a towel with me, but if I had a towel, this is to surrender or to give up. And it's the idea that you're in a boxing match, you're getting absolutely smashed by your opponent, and your coach throws in your towel that he used on your head, or your face to get rid of sweat. He's thrown it in to say, stop the fight. So we use this to mean we've surrendered or we give up, or we're telling someone, you need to throw in the towel, stop. So the opposing team threw in the towel. They surrendered, they gave up. You can be in for it. If you're in for it or in for something, that is like you're about to get in trouble. You're about to get in trouble. So I did something wrong at school and I know that when I go home, I'll be in for it. That's like my parents are going to yell at me. I'm definitely going to be in for it. I'm going to be in so much trouble. You can be rolling in it. So imagine something's doing this. You've got a cylinder. It's rolling like this. If you're rolling in it, we use this to talk about being rich. The basic idea, imagine that you have a room full of money, filled to the roof, full of money. You've climbed in on the money and you're rolling around. You're rich. You're so rich that you're rolling on the money. You're rolling in the money, you're rolling in it. So we often just use in it. So to own your own house, you must be rolling in it. You must be rolling in it. Something can be etched in one's memory. If something is etched, that's the idea of being like carved into my memory. If something is etched in my memory, it is vividly remembered. It is unforgettable. So a tragic event could happen. Maybe I saw someone die, or I lost an arm in an accident, and I'm never going to forget this thing. I can say it's etched in my memory. I will never forget it. So what happened is etched in my memory forever. You can set something in stone, etch something in stone, and carve something in stone. Sort of like the memory thing, but this time in a rock, in a stone. You imagine the time of Romans, and they would carve things in stone, and that message is still there today to be read. It's lasted a very long time. So we use this often in the negative to mean that something is not absolute, that something is changeable, that it is not unchangeable. Okay, so it can be changed. It's not set in stone. It's not etched in stone. It's not carved in stone. It's the idea that plans aren't fixed. They're not set. Well, we can change if we need. Things aren't set in stone. The plans aren't etched in stone. They're not carved in stone. You can dig your heels in. And your heel, if I can get mine up without busting anything, is this thing, okay? So if I dig my heel in, it's the idea of I've pushed my heel into the ground, I've dug it in to the ground. I've kicked my heels in, I've dug them in, and I'm being stubborn, like I don't want to move. So you imagine you're trying to pull a horse. You've got the reins of the horse and you're trying to pull that horse. If it decides, I'm not moving, mate, I'm staying right here, he's pushed in his heels in the ground and just said, go for it. Try pulling me, but you're not going to do it. So that's to dig your heels in. We can often dig our heels in on something, meaning that it's like a decision we've made and we're not going to change our mind. So the example sentence I have here is, she's dug her heels in and she said, I'm not coming to the Barbie. I'm not coming to the Barbie. And a Barbie, I'm sure all of you guys will know, is a barbecue. So she's dug her heels in, she's decided, she's being stubborn, I'm not coming to the Barbie. Dug my heels in. Your heart cannot be in something. We often use this as the negative, for it to not be in something. His heart's not in it. It's not in it. And this is the idea of not being emotionally involved in a certain thing. So to not be committed to something. So for instance, I'm playing footy, and footy is slang for football in Australia. If I decide my heart's not in it, I might quit because I don't like it anymore. I'm not committed to it. I'm not 100% engaged or involved with football. I quit. My heart's not in it. I just can't do this anymore. Okay, I'm sorry. It's not in it. You can pack it in. To pack something in, that would be, imagine you've got, I guess, like a suitcase, and you're packing your things in to the suitcase to leave. You want to go out, you're going to go forever, you're going away, so you pack it in. This is to stop trying to do something. Or it could also be to go to bed, to hit the hay, to go to sleep. But you might hear people say, yeah, that's enough work for today, guys. Let's pack it in, let's head home. So that's to finish. Let's stop trying to do everything. You could have enough of something and just say, let's pack it in. I'm going to pack it in, I'm going home. Maybe you've got friends over, you're having a bit of a party, but you're getting tired. You might say, guys, I'm going to pack it in and hit the hay. I'm going to go to bed. I'm going to pack it in. The very last one here, guys, is to put your foot in it. To put your foot in it. This is to put your foot in your mouth or in someone's mouth, usually one's own mouth. And that is to say something that you are going to regret. I often do this, as I'm sure you're probably aware. I'm pretty flamboyant. I say a lot of stuff and it comes out fast. As a result, I quite often say things that I regret instantly, and so I put my foot in my mouth. I put my foot in it. So when I said that my mate looked really fat, I put my foot in it. I put my foot in it. So with that, guys, let's finish up and I'll see you in the next episode. Good job. Whew, awesome job, guys. We smashed that out. That was a good 40 or so minutes. Thanks for listening to me rabbit on. Thanks for listening to me spout on and on and on. I'm trying to condense as much information into these lessons as possible and just give you as many different phrasal verbs as possible. If you want to sign up for this course, you can save $13 by doing it now. Sign up and you'll get these episodes as they're released. Once the course is finished, I'll be bumping the price up. So make sure you sign up now if you're thinking about doing it and you want to save some money. You're going to get a transcript of every single phrasal verb that I use, not just the ones related to the theme of every episode. So you'll get to see them in context. I know these episodes are relatively long, but it's kind of the point. I want you to be able to just listen to me talk, absorb it, get used to me telling these stories and discussing these examples, because I've watched a lot of what's out there, the content that's on YouTube, and quite often they just brush over things, they discuss things really quickly, and they just don't give you enough examples to be able to let the definition of these phrasal verbs sink in, right? We went over that today. So you'll also be getting an MP3. You'll get a video that includes this one, but inset up into the corner here with the slideshow that I'm actually looking at. In fact, I'll give you a squiz. So I have a slideshow here that I'm reading off, and I do it up. I make it look nice. I put photos on it. I let you guys see everything that I'm looking at with diagrams and extra things to try and help you better understand how to use these phrasal verbs, because that's the mission of this course. It's to help you learn how to use these phrasal verbs effortlessly. Okay, guys, so make sure you sign up if phrasal verbs are a total pain in the butt for you at the moment. But with that aside, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them down in the comments section and I will try and answer them. So I will just have a scroll up because I think a few of you asked some questions earlier. I think as I was talking, I saw a few come up. So how is everyone going? G'day, Armin, Sebastian, how are you? All right, Sebastian, could you please explain to me how to use in the last part of the sentence? I need some examples, mate. I'm unsure about what you mean by in at the last part of the sentence. So that'll be with phrasal verbs, I imagine quite often. You'll see it isolated at the end of a sentence when it's associated with a phrasal verb. So like I pushed in, or I locked myself in. It's going to be at the end there because it's associated with the verb. I assume that's what you're asking. Any other questions, guys? Feel free to ask me anything. If you guys don't have any questions, then I guess I will finish up. But it's good to see you, Adriana. Thanks for coming past. Hey, Christian. Hey, Lala. How are you going? Pete, how are you, sir? Luz as well. I hope you guys are all having a great day. All right, well, I guess there are no questions coming in, guys. So with that, I guess I will chat to you all later. I hope you have an awesome night. Thanks for watching and peace out. See you guys.